So na 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 na. Okay, 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, 4, 5 shots, 6 shots, 7 shots and more. Every day a body hit the floor, everybody yelling out war. These people getting robbed and they losing their jobs and the hurtful parties, there's more. Standing on the corner chasing that paper, not knowing if you see whom they're tough, they getting worried, folks feeling sorry, and they still shut the door. It's like nobody cares anymore. Run up in your face and abuse your grace. What a disgrace when a human race don't wanna embrace, just wanna debate. Shoot you in your face, put you in a case and attend your funeral and eat your cake. When will we recognize, be equalized, be civilized and compromise? Then maybe our real eyes could realize. Don't be analyzed. Yo. All we really want is a better nation. Cause there's violence everywhere that we go. And what are we all fighting for? Can we just let it all go? We're beautiful people. We're beautiful people. We're beautiful people. Yeah, we're beautiful. We're beautiful. We're beautiful. Okay, all I'm seeing is AKs, dead bodies, crime scenes, crying mamas, angry daddies, jail full of them young teens, headshot, phone call, bad news, mom screams, yellow tape, ambulance. Every day in the hood is a routine. Everything is going loco. Our generation's in a chokehold, feeling like a Marion with that icebox. Just the way we living is so cold. When it comes to love, we make no efforts. We aborted all the methods. We claim the life we live is precious. When we squeeze that gun, then someone's breathless, so reckless. Don't get me started on some rappers with they violent rhymes. All they do is add fire to these wicked times.
I think passion is something that can be contagious. You know, that I think if someone is passionate about a topic, people become engaged. And if you may not initially have an interest in the topic, but you, I think, become engaged with the energy that they have about what it is that they're talking about. I definitely am passionate about the ocean and about the Bahamas and about the environment. And I think I'm able to use my passion to inspire others to, you know, explore something that they haven't seen before. My name is Nikita Shiel-Roll, and I am a conservation biologist. I'm also the founder and executive director of Young Marine Explorers. I was born in Toronto, Canada in 1987. And I lived in Canada, I grew up in Canada for 7 years before we moved to the Bahamas. And moving to the Bahamas as a 7-year-old, I hated it. I hated the Bahamas. I absolutely hated the country. And I think it's just because, you know, you were a child and your whole world got turned upside down. You know, and then I think really moving to the Bahamas was sort of the beginning of, I don't want to say the beginning of my life, but it was just, I think has marked a significant time in sort of my development and sort of me becoming the person that I am today. So since, you know, moving to the Bahamas, my life became surrounded by the ocean, spending time outside. And so that was everything from going to the beach, eating mangoes in the water with my parents, you know, going snorkeling. As I got older, my brother and I, we would just go exploring, snorkeling in the canals, and I don't know, we spent a lot of time as children growing up or exploring the outdoors. I mean, I had a birthday party where I made all my friends go trampling through the bush, go see a pond in the back of the house. Not everyone really liked that, actually. Anyways, but I think that sort of is really a good example of sort of the childhood that I had that was surrounded by nature. And that definitely, I think, inspired the career, you know, choice or the career path that I've taken today. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Miami, where I did a Bachelor of Art in Marine Affairs. And I then went on to do my Master of Science in Biodiversity, Wildlife, and Ecosystem Health from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. Kind of like to make an analogy between a conservation biologist being a modern day superhero, whereas, this conservation biologist is working to save the world. Superheroes focus on protecting those people who aren't able to protect themselves. Conservation biologists are protecting plants, animals, and ecosystems that are not in a position to protect themselves. Conservation biologists are trying to ensure the health, well-being, economic stability of the world. Conservation biologists use education, and they use activism, and they use evidence-based research to drive conservation and to drive their actions that will change policy. The only difference between superheroes and conservation biologists is that superheroes are protecting the world from these mutated monsters. Conservation biologists, we're really trying to protect the world from ourselves. The Bahamas is a challenging country when it comes to governance because we are comprised of 700 islands. And so that requires infrastructure to be placed on, at least every single island that has a large enough human population. The challenge is that as a country, we do not have a collective evaluation of our resources. So we are not in a position to collectively say we are improving or we are getting worse.
What we need is an overarching, well thought out Environmental Protection Act that encompasses planning and land use planning more particularly, so that each island has its own land use plan. You would have to look at each island beforehand, before development. Take a look at its features and decide what could go there instead of the other way around. What tends to happen now is new industry or new development comes, and then we try to write the regulations for it. The oil exploration is a typical example. You allow oil exploration in the absence of regulations, and then you scramble to try to write the regulations once they're here.
Even though the Bahamian economy depends on pristine environment, how many oil spills have we had out west now by Clifton? I can't tell you, and neither can the government probably. I think in one instance, the oil spill sat there for days before there was any kind of real government response to it.
I mean, continuously, day and night, night and day. There's probably a sheen out there now. I mean, you simply can't ignore it.
This has been going on since 2001, when I first started diving. There is a continuous leak of oil that gets into the ocean. The exact cause of the oil and who is responsible, these are challenges that need to be addressed. But the reality is that there are these continual oil leaks that have smothered the reefs on Southwest New Providence. And, there have been countless amount of times where I'm in the water and you are at the bottom and you can look up and you can see oil slicks above you. You have oil on your dive gear, you have oil on your hair, and so as irritating as it is for me as a human to have oil on my skin, everyone knows that oil has huge negative and significant impacts on the health of coral reefs and marine ecosystems. We need to be actively involved in conservation. And in doing this, we need to create a conservation plan, provide a roadmap for our efforts. Conservation plans require sort of three main components. One, you have to have outreach and stewardship. Two, you need to have the scientific monitoring of status and trends of ecosystems. And then three, you also have to have that policy and management component. In the Bahamas, when we have so much biodiversity, it can be difficult for us to identify what ecosystems deserve conservation attention. The Zoological Society of London has developed a ranking process to help us identify species that are both globally threatened and at risk of extinction. And so they've done this by identifying two specific things. One, identifying those species that are globally threatened and at risk of extinction. And two, identifying the species that are rare and have very few close relatives on the tree of life, which means, they have a very unique genetic makeup. This further emphasizes the importance of Bahamian biodiversity, not just for us in the Bahamas, but also that the biodiversity that we have in the Bahamas contributes to the global context, and the species that we have in the Bahamas are important on a global level. Over the past 2 years, I have focused most of my research on pillar coral, which is one of the 5 edge species that we have in the Bahamas. And in many ways, I have used pillar coral as a flagship species to promote coral conservation in the Bahamas. Over the past 50 years, ecosystems around the world have changed drastically. Many different animals have gone extinct. And one of the horrible things about once an animal goes extinct, or even if a plant goes extinct, is you can't get it back. That means those amazing genes, the amazing makeup of that creature is gone forever. And so this goes right to what we're talking about biodiversity, the importance of biodiversity. And then also, there's something called ecosystem services, which are the goods and the benefits that we as humans get. When you think of biodiversity, I want you to think about money in the bank. All right? Lots and lots of money in your bank. That's biodiversity. When you think about ecosystem services, I want you to think about all the things that you can buy from the money that you have in your bank. Money in the bank, you want to buy a car? Done. What else do you want to buy? A house. Money from the bank, bam, you have a house. What do you want to buy? A boat. Money from the bank, bam, you have a boat. All right? So all these things you guys have just bought with the money that you had in your biodiversity bank. All the animals, all the plants that make up the Earth's biodiversity provide humans with food, with protection, with enjoyment. All right, the air that we breathe these are all different types of ecosystem services. Now, money in the bank starts to run out. There's no more money in the bank. Can you buy another house? No, the problem is as biodiversity decreases, as the money in the bank decreases, the quality of the ecosystem services will also decrease. So, taking it back to corals, if we do not preserve and protect the coral reefs that we have, all the different diversity that we have within our reefs in the Bahamas, we can't expect to continue eating conch. We can't expect to continue eating grouper or lobsters if we are destroying them by our actions, such as building on the coastlines in an unsustainable manner, if we are fishing in grouper spawning aggregations without even giving the groupers a chance to reproduce, if our laws are not being enforced, or if we don't even have laws, if we kill off our coral reefs, the corals not only die, but every single animal that lives on that reef goes with it. So what I really want you guys to think about this week is, what can you do? What differences can you make in your life that will help to ensure biodiversity remains? To ensure that we can have different animals, different types of creatures that will sustain the livelihood of ourselves and will sustain the livelihood of other ecosystems. In the Bahamas, we have a huge divide between the rich and the poor, and the outside world, I think a lot, thinks of the Bahamas as a very rich country.
Some of the indicators that suggest to us that we're in good economic standing are probably don't take into account kind of the day-to-day lives of the average Bahamian. And I think that's important to point out. So yes, we may have the 3rd highest GDP per capita in the Western Hemisphere, but at the same time, we have rising rates of inequality among the poorest, especially between the poorest and wealthiest Bahamian.
We have a very high GDP. And so because of that, as a country, we don't qualify for a lot of these aid grants that a lot of other developing nations do. And I think one of the challenges with this is that our GDP is not a true reflection of the Bahamian people. GDP stands for the gross domestic product.
Bahamians don't actually own any of the means of production of their economy, right? So if our economy is tourism, the means of production would be tourist resorts, casinos, and all of these things. Bahamians own very little of this, right? And this leads people to argue that we live in what is essentially a plantation economy, where large foreign investors come and build big buildings or plantations, if you would like to think about it that way, and locals go to pick the cotton. They may take home wage labor, but they do not actually take home the profits of the business, right? And those profits, and more often than not, are also not kept in the Bahamas. They're sent away, okay? So the question really is, do we actually live in the Bahamas or do we just work here?
There's no incentives as to actually bring the mainstream population into being owners of the economy. There's none of that. You don't hear any of that. None. You know what you hear? Oh, we're gonna build this hotel, which is you don't hear them talk about the building footprint, the amount of sewage, where the sewage is going, how the fertilizer will be applied, who is managing this. You don't hear none of that. You know what you hear? Yeah, and we're gonna create 40 jobs. Well, the problem I have with that is that not all Bahamians see that as the Bahamian dream.
If you look at the way that Nassau is set up, kind of in a simplistic way, the poorest neighborhoods in Nassau are really kind of in the middle of Nassau, right? So quite literally the inner city, right? The inner city is also plagued by things like pollution, garbage, poor roads, dilapidated buildings, environments that are not healthy or friendly. And on the outskirts of the city, as you travel west and east, west where some Nassauians may say the new money resides, and out east with the kind of palatial estates from yesteryear. On these sides of the island, far, far away from the inner city, are kind of beautiful, lush gardens, access to beaches, and all of these kinds of things. On top of that, with unreliable public transportation, that makes these places seem a bit out of reach for people who may live in the inner city. And in fact, going to the beach on a holiday is a trip, where for people who who come from a certain economic standing, going to the beach means walking out their back door, right?
What's happening is that the underserved are being locked into the center of the island, while the overserved have total access to the beach and deny them access to their birthright. And so you have this crazy law that says that you can own, that up to the high water mark is owned by all the people. Well, my friend, if you don't have a boat to get there, then you're fresh out of luck. How are you going to get to the high water mark from the land side without public access, without adequate parking? And so there's so many other issues that affect the quality of the day-to-day living of Bahamians.
The people said no, waves are still regulated. Power always off because of faulty generators. Or people whose salary overinflated. The answer to crime, yet crime escalated. One of the killingest countries, that's how we've been rated. Gotta change the way our children educated. Change the system is failing. Change the way we patrol our borders, foreigners with guns.
The Bahamas has a very large, or I think larger than other societies, private school system. And that's been because, you know, the government subsidizes private schools to alleviate some of the pressure on the government schools. And what we're seeing is that we have these huge populations of students within our government schools. And even though education is provided to all, quality of education is not the same. So where do you think education is better, in government school or private school?
The private schools, it's better because like they offer more most times than what the government schools offer us. Like they have more than we have. Like they have more opportunities.
Here in the Bahamas, we have well over 200 public schools, and they're scattered. And so that poses a problem in that all of our students throughout the Bahamas don't have access to the different disciplines that will make education equal across our island, even though there's much effort to try to accomplish that. But because of our scattered island, it poses a problem.
As a product of one of the private schools, I became, I think, very aware when I started working within the government school system of how extreme these differences were. When I first came back from school, I taught at one of the high schools. What I was expecting my students to do and what they were not able to do. And this made me think about what I was doing in grade 10, or even what I was doing in grade 6 within my private school, is what the students in grade 10 were struggling to do.
When they come to me in grade 10 for chemistry, as chemistry students, I find that a lot of the basic mathematical skills are lacking. And it really takes away a lot of time from the content that you should be teaching. And because you're spending time on basics that students should have had, it means by the end of 3 years, when they should be ready to take the external exam, which is BGCSE, all of the content is not covered.
How many students do you guys have in your class? What's the largest class size you have?
Oh my gosh. 30. No, 48.
I have 37 children in my language class.
Oh, yeah.
48 students in my room.
48 in your homeroom. When I taught biology, I had 38 students in my 10th grade class. When I taught, I had students who did not have desks. And so because how the system was set up, there were students who had to stand up. They would lean on the wall. And so this obviously is not reflective in every single classroom, but these are challenges that exist within our system.
Literacy is a major problem. That is seen in the students who come to us. Many of them have failed the BJC English language. The BJC it's a 9th grade exit exam. Many of them D's, E's, and below. And so even by the time they reach grade 12, we find that our results nationwide, not only here at my school, nationwide, the English language results are not good.
You add this on top of, in certain schools, may not have science, like a chemistry teacher or a specialized teacher to cover some of the subject matter. And so all these challenges, in addition to maybe the students who aren't able to purchase the textbooks for the classes, or they are not coming to school prepared because of whatever issues, result in students who are not performing well within the school system.
50% of Bahamian kids are graduating or are leaving school without actually graduating. And part of the reason for that is school has nothing to do with their day-to-day lives. The things that they're learning have no value to them in a real sense.
Majority of students graduating from the government schools actually do not graduate. They receive what we call a leaving certificate. And this is because we pass students through each grade. So whether or not you have sufficiently completed the requirements to say complete what it would be grade 9, you will move on to grade 10.
Having a ill-functioned, illiterate society can mean disaster, because it means that persons are not able to reason, and that's probably accounts for some of the crime we experience in our society. If you're able to reason with person, if you're able to comprehend, if you're able to see things from a different view, until we are able to get our students, at least all of our 12th graders functioning at a level where they can reason, think things through, move out of just the recall mode into comprehension, synthesis, evaluation, then I think we'll begin to see an improvement in the way our students behave, an improvement in the way when they leave school out in the wider society, how they behave.
Without imagination and critical thinking, they're also not good citizens. And that is, I think, the major problem, right? They do not know how to question their government. They don't know how to question authority in particular, and not just question in a rebellious way, but to ask for facts, to ask for evidence, to follow something to its logical conclusion, to understand why something is important to them, how something on a governmental level affects their day-to-day life. These things are missing. And I can tell you that from experience working at the College of the Bahamas. If you cannot put a sentence together, right? If you can read the words, but not comprehend what they actually mean, if you're not able to think about a piece of writing, then when you stand in a booth to vote on a constitutional referendum, or when your government releases a white paper on new taxation systems, your ability to participate in the democracy that affects your life on a day-to-day basis is completely diminished. Anytime somebody says our education system is not producing good workers, shake their hand and say, yes, this is true, but we are more than workers. We are also citizens, and our educational system is not producing good citizens.
I think that one of the things that we have to look at is this creation of an underclass that's happening right in front of us. I mean, we hear the real dismal school numbers that young people are leaving school, a lot of them, and they don't have the tools that they need to succeed. And what we hear less of is how we intend to fix that.
How do you accept what they say? And it's not the right way. Just say seek the truth, and it will set you free. So fight for what you believe in, say, because that's when we will win. Fight for what you believe in, say, because that's when we will win. Why won't you sweat to seek the truth, and nothing but the truth, say, so help you Jah. Why won't you sweat to find the truth, and nothing but the truth, say, so help you Jah. Don't listen to what they say, because I found a better way.
I wanted to find a way that I could get high school students involved in monitoring coral reefs. I realized that there was a need, that in the Bahamas, we don't really have any baseline information on a lot of things. When we're talking about truly understanding, does the Bahamian government or do the Bahamian people know really how are our reefs doing on a local scale? This is information that we don't have. On a local scale, there are serious threats to the reefs in the Bahamas. I firmly believe that everything is connected and that we need to ensure that we have healthy ecosystems that can then fuel and support our health and well-being, as Bahamians, being our economy, being our social, cultural appreciation, so on and so forth.
The environment is a part of the public trust. How are these people going to be employed? How are they going to eat? Tourism depends on a pristine environment. You cannot have development that comes in and destroys the very pristine nature of what attracted them to that location to start out with. There's a direct link between illiteracy and poverty, and there's a direct link between poverty and environmental degradation.
I looked at all the different type of corals that we have in the Bahamas. And I identified how, if I was to get high school students through a citizen science program to monitor the reefs that we have, how could I do that? During college, I started Young Marine Explorers. It was during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year. All throughout my college career, I really spent my undergraduate career developing YME and sort of the different programs that we offered. I had invested so much time and sort of really began this movement, of what I thought was a program that had the ability to inspire Bahamian youth and really create change in the country. I wanted to return home and dedicate time to trying to build that and to develop it into a program that, significantly impacts the country. What I would like to offer with students who are part of YME is options. And I think having options is something that is associated with wealth. When you have the ability to choose what it is that you want to do. The reality is, all the students in the Bahamas are not going to go to college. All the students in the Bahamas may not want to go to college. But I would like to make it so that students who have come through YME are in a much more competitive position should they want to go to college, and that they are then, in a position where they could apply for scholarships or be even eligible for scholarships, where a lot of these students aren't. And even if we take college out of the picture, we want to inspire students and remind students that they are the ones who are in control of their future, and they're in control of what this country looks like within the next 30 years. Because these are the students who are going to become, whether they become the ministers, or they become the civic servants, or they become, the doctors, the lawyers, what have you. These are the students who will make up the bulk of Bahamian society. And it's important for me that they understand that they hold the power. And in holding the power, they have to be very aware of the decisions that they make, because the decisions that they make directly impact what this country looks like, positive or negative. I think I'm able to use my passion to inspire others to, explore something that they haven't seen before. And I think within those first experiences, if you do something that you haven't done before, and if that becomes a positive experience, then you're going to want to do it again. It's a sea hare. It's a tiny little sea hare. You see it?
That's a sea hare.
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think what I've been able to do, I've been able to make a lot of these first encounters with the environment, with the ocean, positive for these students. And so that becomes a positive memory that they want to relive. And so that's why they come back to YME. Of course, have fun though. If you have any questions, of course, as always, let's ask. They call me fun. I think a lot of the YME students will call me fun, but they also call me crazy. Because a lot of times I'm not really afraid to make a fool of myself, especially in front of them. So I will jump around and scream and do really silly things. I think at heart, I am a child, and I am just this really curious, adventurous, passionate child. For me, it's inspiring because there will be some Saturdays, because I run the YME classes every Saturdays, and there'll be some Saturdays that I don't really want to get out of my bed first thing in the morning, and to go and deal with 40 screaming teenagers. But these students, I think, have a huge amount of energy, and they bring this positive energy with them. And it's kind of like a cycle where I think I've been able to open the door for them, where they've found this passion and this interest in the Bahamian environment. And then on those days when I'm maybe not really feeling so inspired, working with them fuels me and it inspires me. And I don't think there's ever been a day after a YME lesson or an ocean classroom session that I have not been, inspired, where I've seen how our programs have changed sort of the lives of these students, and then also not felt overjoyed because you can see a connection. And sometimes it just takes, it's just one student who draws, a connection between something that I might have said the week before. And a really good example of this is my garbage rule. So when if a student ever litters, whether they are, we're on the beach together or they're in my car, I make them stop and they have to pick up 25 pieces of garbage. And so even if that means I'm driving and you drop a tiny little piece of garbage out my window, if I see it, I stop my car and you have to get out in front of everyone and pick up 25 pieces of garbage. But I think then what has been inspiring for me to see is that a student who notices someone else who's dropped a piece of garbage and they say, you need to pick up 25 pieces of garbage, because they're acknowledging that there's consequences. In my world, it's you have to pick up 25 pieces of garbage. But I think at the deeper message, they acknowledge that littering is a bad thing. And so we have to be responsible. And I think the powerful message in there is that it's not me as the adult who's asking the student, but it is one of their peers holding their friend accountable for their behavior. I run YME like it's a full-time job. I spend anywhere between 40 to 80 hours a week. And at this point in time, right now we're in our 7th year, I haven't received a salary. We have next to no funding. The right funding and the right administrative structure would enable us to, at a larger scale, do this type of program that's not dependent on sort of like goodwill and charity. But I think through a strong community program that's funded and sort of the proper partnership, YME has the ability to provide this to certify hundreds of students in the country, but then also use these students to sort of give national service in a way and help develop their country through doing an activity that they love and that think is really cool. So what we're doing is, it's really twofold. It's one, inspiring environmental service-oriented leaders, but then also fulfilling needs that exist within the governmental structure from both an information perspective, with research on the status and trends of biodiversity and the health of coral reefs in the Bahamas, and then also when it comes to reinforcing the standardized Bahamian government curriculum through our programs. Bahamas is home, and it's my love. I've got the islands tattooed on my foot. Almost every single day of the year, we've got blue skies and we've got this crystal clear water. We've got white sand, we've got pink sand. We are a great people. We are, a fun people. We have strong cultural ties. There are so many things that are distinctly Bahamian. I think it's a pride that you have, that you associate with from, the country or the place that you call home, the place that you identify with. And there's so many different things about being a Bahamian that I love. And I think some of it is sometimes difficult to articulate, but there's this strong connection that I have with the Bahamas. And I travel a lot and I love traveling. But at the end of the day, I'm always coming home to the Bahamas. And I can get frustrated with the Bahamas, but in the same respect is that when you have siblings and you can get frustrated with your siblings, but I can yell at my brother, but you can't, right? Because it's my brother. And so it's the same way that I can identify the challenges that I have and that, we as a country have, but I also want to be part of that solution, And so as much as I will get annoyed and irritated with how things operate in this country and how we're not at the standard where we need to be, I'm also going to be the first in line saying, I'm going to be part of the solution to get us to where we need to be. We need Bahamas where Bahamians are concerned and active citizens, and we are actively aware and engaged in what's going on in our country, from sort of the day-to-day operations of the food that we're buying, where it comes from, to sort of the larger issues that governments deal with that have direct social and economic implications on our lives. You know, and I think that type of behavior, being an active citizen, is intricately tied to this holistic view of how we tackle the environment. We can't look at things independently. We can't look at things from, oh, that's an environmental issue, that's an education issue, that's a health issue. You know, we have to take a holistic and united approach and understand that this is the Bahamas, and these are all key factors of that.
As a country, we can only advance as far as the weakest Bahamian advances. We can advance no further. So we all have to join hands and take that one step together. And I cannot emphasize enough that this has to be done together.
We have to figure out ways that we can better advocate for people who have no voice. Or more importantly, find ways to give voice to people who have yet to find their voice.
We are major stakeholders. We're here to build a country. We are major stakeholders. These students, we need to teach these students, prepare these students for life, to take their position in our society. Let's build a country.
I believe that YME has the ability to create change within the Bahamas. I feel, you know, and I believe that YME has the ability to inspire and change the lives of the students that join our program. You know, our program is not just an environmental education class. Our program is about building citizens, and our program is about creating a better Bahamas. And it, you know, this is my thing. You know, some people may call it purpose, but it's something that I am committed to and that I'm passionate about, and that I feel a responsibility to make the Bahamas a better place within my capacity. And I feel like YME is a vehicle that can do that. And I know that with a little bit more time and with the right amount of sort of support and help, this will be a model that can be then replicated throughout the country, and then maybe even, you know, throughout the region.
Now is the time. This is the fight of our generation. It's our time now. We must make this happen. We don't have anybody else to blame. We can't look to anybody else to do this for us. We must value it, and we must do it. My name is Romuald Sotario Emmanuel Antonio Ferreira. My background is in ecology. I did a law degree, and then I was called to the bar in London and in the Bahamas. And subsequently, I launched Ferreira & Company and started this environmental consultancy, environmental law business.
My name is Joey Gaskins. I'm a former lecturer from the College of the Bahamas in the School of Social Sciences with a master's in race, ethnicity, and post-colonial studies. Currently, I own a business, Mojo's, which is a small business as a young entrepreneur, and we're hoping that our restaurant can be a model of corporate responsibility.
My name is Agatha Thompson. I'm presently teaching at the government high school. This is a public high school here on the island of New Providence. I've been teaching for about 27 years. From I started teaching, I was always in the public school system. I've taught from grade 7 through 12, yeah.
I pledge to make it my responsibility to be educated and to educate others about the importance of sustaining our marine environment, to set an example by changing my way of living to promote environmental sustainability. As a YME member, I will shape the future of the Bahamas.
My passion is marine biology.
My future aspirations is to become a marine biologist.
I have been involved for 3 years in Young Marine Explorers.
I'm currently enrolled in marine science. I'm also a veteran of YME, a marine club that I strongly admire.
I've been a member of YME for 3 years.
I've been a member of Young Marine Explorers. This is my second.
I have a ridiculous weakness for animals, especially reptiles.
This is why I dedicated my life to become a marine biologist. I truly believe that life is better under the sea.
They are misunderstood by people, and because of this, I must be their voice.
I hope one day to, inspire others and helping others to understand the importance of conservation dealing with marine mammals.
My love for marine biology is so deep. It's deeper than you. Thank you.
All right, Toronto, come on, we're gonna do my parrotfish. So let's just pretend I'm a wee little old lady. All right, and I'm in my house, and I take care of my garden. And with that, I also have a beautiful gannet tree that's just right with that honey. Honey in the shed. Right? Those are great gannets. and so I'm right there. Don't pay no mind to nobody, maybe reading my newspaper. And all of a sudden I see this man coming to my yard. And what does he start to do? And then what do you think? Boy, if you don't get from out my yard, get. Alright, so I see him, and I see him. I don't want him to be stealing my gannet, so I'm gonna go and run out there and tell him to go get. Don't make me call the police. John, you don't go home. I call you mom. Alright? So this is what happens with the parrotfish. The parrotfish comes in, the damselfish is like, go, be gone. And so the damselfish chases the parrotfish out. But then again, we have the boutangs. They're a little smarter than parrotfish. They've decided that in order for them to take advantage of the damselfish's garden, what they have to do, they have to go in a group. So let me get some of you guys up to be my boutang. All right. So we have these boutang here. And so I'm in my yard just like before, reading my newspaper, paying no mind to nobody. Then all of a sudden, from nowhere, these damselfish or these young men come and swarm. They swarm my tree. And so what I want to do is I'm going to be like, wait, no, get. And then as soon as I turn around, he comes back, get. No, get. All right, and so by the time I'm like tired, so I'm trying to get these men to get, they've gone. They've got everything they need. They've got enough gannets to sell on the side of the road, and I'm left with nothing on my tree. And so this is exactly what happens with the boutang. The boutang, they're like, we go together as a group, we'll eat the algae garden, and by the time we're gone, the poor damselfish will be so tired, and we'll have given up on everything. All right, so that's the story of the damselfish.